So we just wait a moment for people to tune in. And if there's anyone tuning in already, if you could just let us know like how the audio is. So yeah, we'll wait a couple of minutes.
Yeah.
I'm just going to check that I can see the comments and everything.
If you click that symbol, that square symbol, I don't know what it's called.
Oh yeah, the little comments icon. I can see that one there. It's a whole
Yeah.
new world to me, this one.
Vanished.
Okay, brilliant.
Chat, live chat. Oh, right, okay. Live
So
chat.
we've got a few questions through already, which is good. So in fact, I sent through few through a few. God, that's a bit of a tongue twister. A few through to you. But if we get any others, then I can pop those up as well.
Yeah. So why do you not ask people if they've got questions? They can put them in the comments, and then we'll do them at like the end or something.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So if anyone's got any questions, then do let us know in the comments, and then we can come on to those in the end. But we might start. Let's have a look. How many for time? Yeah, let's make a start. So, welcome everyone. So today we've got Andrew from Run, Stretch, Succeed. So he runs a YouTube channel. He is a dance teacher, PT as well, so personal trainer, and also an ultra runner. So for today's Q&A, we're going to be talking about his background, a little bit how he got into running, and then we'll also, towards the end, think a little bit more about like questions you might have on particular like mobility and how that might have an impact, a positive impact on running too. So Andrew, do you want to just tell us a little bit firstly about how you got into running and just your running story?
Well, basically, one of my students entered me into Wigan 5K because that's like my town. And I was like, yeah, I'll do that. And then she entered me, and I was like, oh my God. I was like, I'm going to have to run this race. So I did that. And then I was like, oh, I probably could do a marathon. And I thought a marathon was like 10K at the time. I was like, a marathon's not that far. It's like 10K. And then someone explained it, and I thought, oh my God. I was like, that's really fair. And then from there, someone said I wouldn't be able to do a marathon. So I was like, you know what, right? Um, don't judge me because I can do anything I want. So then I entered Manchester Marathon and I did that, and I thought, do you know what? I can do even further than this. So I can just prove you wrong even more. And that's how I got into running, was just out of spike, really. I don't feel like it's really a good reason as such, but at least it's had a positive outcome in the end.
So it sounds like it was very much because people said you can't do this, and then you thought, well, I'm going to prove them wrong and show them that I can.
Yeah.
And how long has it been that you've been running? So like, is it since you were a child, or is it something that you've got into more recently?
About 4 years.
Okay, so about 4 years in
2 years
total. And
lockdown.
so was it around lockdown? Did you say?
2 years before lockdown, and then I didn't run through
Okay.
lockdown. But
And did lockdown change your running at all? Because I know that for some people, like they went out more, or they did different types of things of running, or some got into running in the first place in lockdown. But did it have any impact on your running?
it didn't have, because I've got my own business. Lockdown was really stressful for me in general because there was no grants coming through at first because I'm classed as renting a room. So I had no wage or nothing. So basically, I just went into it like a lot of people, like a spiral into nowhere. So I was just like drinking, except the last lockdown. So there was like 3 wasn't there. The last lockdown, I was like, I'm not going to drink. I'm just going to be healthy. And I did like a ridiculous amount of exercise every day. I did like 5 hours. I learned how to hula hoop, like to the point where after lockdown, I did workshops on hula hooping. There was people who was, because I was doing it so long every day, like 5 hours a day. People was like, "How can you do that? I've been doing it 10 years and I've not got to that point." But it was literally because I've got quite an addictive personality. I just spent 5 hours for like so many months doing hula hooping. So it was only in the last lockdown I did it more as a health kick, but I didn't really run, to be honest.
And could you just tell us like a little bit more like about your work, like what like a typical week looks like? Because I think you mentioned before like some dance teaching and then also personal training a bit. So yeah, what's like a typical week like for you?
So a typical week for me is so let's think, like Monday, I'll do some social media like advertising my business. Then I have an afternoon class and nighttime classes. So I tend to go for a run in the morning. I do like speed training before the second class, and then that follows through to the rest of the week, really. So basically my training just revolves around my work. So I have set hours and then I try to fill the hours between with training and stuff I need to do for the week, like social media for like advertising for work, obviously recording for YouTube, and then I go bed. Go on bed. It's quite nice, to be honest, to have so much freedom, but at the same time, I do feel like it would be so different to have like a 9 to 5 job.
Yeah, I suppose probably like both formats like have their perks. Like with the with the 9 to 5, it means like it's regular and steady. But then of course it can get samey. But then at the same time with self-employment, then it can be a bit more precarious. But you have got much more freedom. So it's probably there's advantages for both. Just tell us a bit more about like your running and in terms of like your what you feel your biggest running achievements so far have been and like the types of races that you've done.
Um, with me, like the biggest race I've done is obviously Leeds to Liverpool, so that's 130 miles. But I feel like the achievements are not the races themselves because I'm quite erratic. I've got like ADHD and stuff. Is actually just being able to follow a plan and like to train so often, not get distracted from the training. I feel like that's more of an actual achievement from the race itself because I feel like you come to these outcomes that you want to finish these races. You've got these goals. You've got like a marathon, 100 miles, 10K, whatever it is. But to train for it and to be steady and keep to that commitment is like a really big achievement itself. It's not necessarily about finishing the race. Like I DNF loads, but generally like how many miles you do training is absolutely ridiculous. So I would say actually the achievement itself is more into the training. The race is just the outcome from keeping to such a schedule.
I think it's a really good way to look at it because actually like if you have a race that doesn't go so well or ends in a DNF, then that can sometimes feel like um I mean it is slightly disappointing anyway, but if you put everything on the race and nothing else, then it can feel even more significant. So would you say you're much more like process rather than outcome focused in terms of your running?
I would say I find the process a lot harder than the actual race itself. Like, because obviously now I can run 100 miles because I've done it. But to get a good, like, good for me, like to push myself to the limit where I feel like this is the limit my body can go to. It's all to do with the training, and sometimes it's not exactly easy to train itself. It's the stuff in life, what comes in the way, stuff happens, what's out of your control. To stick to that training plan itself is really hard, and I think that's just an achievement itself to stick
Yeah.
to a plan and actually do it. Um, like so much goes into training for races. As the race itself, I know I can go. Do you get what I mean?
Yeah,
But to
yeah.
myself up to that race, I feel like a lot of hard work goes into that.
Yeah, because when you break it down in terms of like hours and time spent and miles covered for training, it's a huge amount. So yeah, I can completely relate to that. That process is an achievement in itself. Of course, you want the race to go well too, but yeah, it is just a big thing to get out there and be able to go through that process. So you do your running and you do dancing and the personal training too. I just wondered if your dancing has benefited your running in any way. Like, do you think there's any benefits that you've got as someone who dances and also runs, which maybe those who don't dance but do running might not have?
Um, I'm going to say yes, but I don't know what I would be like if I didn't dance and do
Of
movement
course.
training, a lot of flexibility training, because none of us know if we was a different person, what we would be like, and not live the lifestyles we are. But I generally feel like flexibility training itself is the best for everyone. Like, I feel like well, like my nan, who's 91, can touch her own toes, and she broke a hip. She can't walk, but she's completely mobile with a Zimmer frame. As I feel like if you didn't have that mobility, that wouldn't actually physically be possible. And from I've done a lot of research. I don't really sleep, so I just research stuff. The longest living people are like contortionists and yoga teachers, and this has actually been studied. And it's a lot to do with oxygens getting to your muscles and other stuff. So I genuinely feel like flexibility is really important. It's just really important to just move in general, and get the blood flowing and being able to use your body to as much range as possible.
Whilst we're on the topic of kind of flexibility and motion, thought it might be good to bring in one of the questions that someone asked. So I popped a message up last week and said, oh, if anyone's got any questions for you, then do send them through. So one question we had was from Phil. So Phil runs a YouTube channel called Trail Running Phil, and he asked the following. So he said, how long should you hold a stretch for? And is there a time you should stick to or a feeling in the muscle that you should wait for?
I feel like with holding stretches, I don't really have an opinion about this because gymnastics will tell you, gymnastics and dance tell you 30 seconds, fitness tells you 15. I just think hold it till you feel like till you feel loose and go off your opinion. Some stretches like my hips, I've got really tight hips, I can hold them for like a minute and a half. Other stretches I only hold for 15 minutes. It depends when I feel like the benefit's gone, because I have been like flexibility training for years, with like pain and like stuff. Never do anything what hurts because that's your body's way of telling you don't do that. It might feel uncomfortable, but you can build on uncomfortable. It's not damaging. Obviously, the muscles lengthening and the fibers are ripping. What's like a normal thing that scares people, but it's a normal thing, and then they rebuild, and that's what gains flexibility, so called. And there is actually a new study saying flexibility is based on your nervous system. So, depending, it could be nervous system, it could be your muscles ripping. I don't know. I'm not a scientist. But it should, if it feels uncomfortable, it's okay. If you've got any pain, um, or anything what's like unhandleable, just don't do it and come straight out of it. Some days might be different to other days, but that's just the thing with flexibility because it relies on being like hydrated, what you've ate that day, how warm the weather is. Like,
So
I'm not.
actually, it can depend on quite a range of factors. So it's important. It sounds like not to have like a one size fits all approach. Like, oh, everyone should hold a stretch for a minute or a minute and a half.
Really varied. To be honest, if you're looking to gain flexibility, I would look into like more PNF stretching rather than static stretching because static stretching is like fine, it's okay, but you're not building any range of movement. So this is where I do like a lot of active flexibility. So active flexibility to someone is like a squat. So you're holding weight throughout the movement. So that's building muscle as well as static stretching is very like you're pulling it. So I don't do a lot of static training as such. I might use it a tiny bit in the warm up. In certain areas I'm not that flexible in, but everyone is totally individual, to be honest, when it comes to flexibility.
And what do you think of like dynamic stretching with warm-ups for running? Do you think that's a good thing to do?
Yeah, I would say dynamic stretching is like amazing for warm-ups because you're just using the range of motion. I would try to stay away from static stretching and go more into dynamic, but I do static stretching in my warm-up because I know my body. But dynamic, you're using the range of motion. Also, you're just loosening the joints. As if you do static stretching, it is actually been studied that it can actually weaken the muscle because you're pulling it, but you've not got that range of movement as well.
Okay, brilliant. And we've got a another question which kind of links to stretching and movement. So this one came from John, and John, along with Dawn, runs the Two Running Brooms YouTube channel. It might be easier if I read this one out. So he because he talks a little bit about like the context behind this question as well. So he says, I spend several hours in a day commuting and sitting waiting to go into meetings. Over many years, this has led to deactivated glutes and hip flexors and endless mechanical problems. I have a big focus on gym strength and conditioning and home mobility programs. Is there an in-car routine or even sporadic exercises that might help on a daily basis? I'm looking to move the dial between negative impacts and positive ones during the day. So it sounds like, is there anything like John could build into like his daily routine that might mean that he's kind of getting more mobility in there?
Just 1 minute. So with stretching and stuff, some stretching is better than no stretching. Obviously, I don't know your total lifestyle. You obviously sound like you're in a car quite a lot. So just stretch when you can. Where you've got space. Any stretching is obviously better than no stretching. Unless I know your lifestyle and think I can't really give you advice on that. But even just doing like a YouTube video, like I've got one on my channel, or like there's loads of videos online. Doing that for like 10 minutes a week is better than doing nothing. I feel like we set ourselves up to failure with doing thinking I'm going to stretch an hour a week. It's not always possible, but doing 10 minutes is better than doing nothing.
Excellent. Yeah. Maybe with that video, maybe we could pop it in the chat below, and then in the comments below, and then John could have a look at it after. Is there anything like in car that John could? I guess it's hard, isn't it? Because with in car, like your movement's limited, and you can't exactly be, stretching out everywhere.
I get it's there probably is stretches. You're probably best starting with a routine at home, feeling what's good for you. It's all very different compared to different people's flexibility. Where you're flexible, as I've got students who are really flexible in the hamstrings and the hips and are very tight. So it's so individual. Like some people can do a split, but then can't do anything else. But then some people can do other stuff but can't do a split, but they're more flexible in general because the whole body is more flexible. So unless I actually saw how flexible you are, I can't really give you advice because I don't want to give you a stretch what's too intense. So I would start off with the basics at home and then think how you can adapt that to your car itself.
Like you kind of mix it up and change it for what's good for you.
Yeah. So you can just change routine to what's good with you. There probably is loads of stretches. I could do loads of stretches in a car, but I just don't know what to advise another person.
Well, you can do the splits as well, can't you? So I imagine that probably means you can get into like very small spaces and stretch in various inventive ways too.
Yeah, I managed to fit myself in one. Do you know them little cars when you have a kid?
Like the red and yellow ones.
Yeah. Someone said I
Yeah.
was getting one. I did.
Again, it sounds like someone telling you can't do something, and you thought, yeah, I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
Like with the running. So got some other questions here as well. So yeah, these were again from the message I posted up last week. But Carla, my partner, popped a couple of questions on there, and her first question was, what flexibility exercises have helped you to progress with your running?
I wouldn't say it's actually flexibility exercise itself. It's more to do with active flexibility, because I feel like a person who doesn't train flexibility and has not gone into depth like me, flexibility is not all just dynamic, static. There's like active flexibility. So it's like a lot of people who go to the gym can't actually physically squat because they've not got the range of movement there or exercise. So they won't build the muscle up as much as they can and do the full range of movement. Also, they by not doing the full range of movement, they shorten the muscle. So I would just say, how do I explain this online without actually doing it? So it's better to do a stretch where you're lifting your leg and not pulling it and using your body. You're using the muscle to lift it. It is a bit controversial in the running community, because I had a discussion about this with someone, but I think it's because when I did personal training, all the stretches I do, they will not teach you on personal training because it's very basic. But from the people I met, like I've got friends who work like contortionists, I've got a contortion teacher and stuff. And obviously they're very strong people in flexibility. So like literally they can like just lift the legs and then put them over the head and stuff. And it's because they're not pulling the muscle, they're actually like engaging the muscle and lifting it. So like a squat or I guess like a military press. So you've got your hands here and you're pushing it as high as you can. So that would be better than grabbing your arm and then pulling it, kind of thing, because you're actually using the muscle, you're not using something else to help it. Usually, if something gives you cramp, that's quite a good thing, because that means the muscle is being overworked. And the more you work with that muscle, the less cramp you will get.
And I'm just interested about, because you said you've got some contortionist friends. Is there much overlap between like those who are into like contortion and mobility and those who run? Like, are you like the only one who runs in your group of friends who are into like mobility and contortion, or are there lots of others?
I'm going to say mostly, yeah. People who do contortion are obviously quite it's the same with runners, I guess, quite addicted to their sport. So when I was running and doing contortion, my contortion teacher was like, the running's making your legs tight, and I was like, no, I can do both. I'm just gonna have to power through it. And it was hard work. Obviously I'm more experienced now. I don't get that sore from running. And also I don't get that sore. Actually, I get sorer from stretching than running, because you can get DOMs from stretching, but that's because the way I stretch is quite extreme compared to a normal person.
And
Like,
that term DOMS, can you just explain it for anyone who hasn't heard the acronym before, like what it means?
so it's delayed onset muscle soreness. I had to think then because I've not explained it for ages. So basically, it's when you get micro tears in your muscle and each muscle healing. I think nearly 100% sure that's how it's caused. So it's basically your muscle healing, but DOMS does not mean you've got had a good workout. You can have a real workout and not get DOMS. Even that I've just said that's the way they explain it in college, but they also say they don't know if that's what causes it, because they say it might be caused by a lactic acid, obviously. But also lactic acid, there's no evidence actually what causes it. But I know if I've stretched really thin, I get DOMs. So I guess it's a bit individual myself.
So it can depend, yeah. A couple of other questions we had were just about like ultras specifically. So one was, what do you say to yourself when the going gets tough in ultras?
When the going gets tough,
Have you got any like mantras or mottos or things that you tell yourself?
try to carry on as much as possible, one foot in front of the other. There's nothing I actually say or like think in my head. When it gets tough, what it does, and that's natural because it is, we're all pushing ourselves, even marathon runners, actually any runner or any sport is pushing themselves to the limit. I find 5k a lot harder than an ultra, but that's because you're pushing so much in such a little time. Just keep one foot in front of the other. And sometimes you just got to be in that mental pain cave, and just know it's going to go soon, and hopefully something will distract you, because that's why it is a bit like you'll be in the worst mood ever, and then you'll just see like one thing like a bird, and then you'll forget about it, and then you'll be back to normal. So I feel like you just got to push through that situation till it ends itself.
Right. So yeah, so recognizing that actually, you're going to get ups and downs, and that they come and go, and it doesn't mean you're going to have, a down or a dip for the whole rest of the race or anything like that. Onto a lighter question. Like, what's your favorite snack to eat during an ultra?
um I don't think I really, when I did Leeds to Liverpool, do you know the tin potatoes?
The tinned potatoes, you
Yeah.
say?
What you get from like the corner shop?
Oh, like boiled in? Are they in water? Are they?
Yeah. I
Yeah,
really
yeah.
there. But because like obviously like I'm vegan and you're vegan, there's not a lot of what you can have, so I tend to just eat crisps. But I really enjoyed them, and I think the one item, what's quite basic and quite cheap, what I would definitely put in, definitely take with me if I feel like I needed one. Um, Everything else is just like crisp, watermelon as well. When I did
Watermelon, yeah.
this girl was stuffing, because I was so dehydrated, was like literally shoving watermelon in my face, and it was the best thing I've ever had in my life. And I don't eat watermelon, but that moment was amazing.
I need to try the potatoes in a can. Like I've sometimes had roast potatoes, which are really good, like with some salt on. But yeah, never the potatoes in a can. So I need to try that one out. It's a new one. Haven't heard that one before.
Well, I think because they're like pre-boiled, they're quite soft. So, and they're just quite easy to digest. And yeah, I definitely would have them again. I think actually, to be honest, I think I'm going, when I do Chester, I think I'm going to pack them in my bag, because it was really easy to eat. And potato is, I think this is um actually a thing, but it's one of the most filling things. And I think a lot of it is when you're doing ultras, like you're eating the calories, but then your stomach still feels empty. So that was quite good to feel like full at that time.
And I'm wondering as well. This is a bit of a selfish question because it kind of relates to the one of the goals I've got for this year, which is to run my first 100 miler. But have you got any tips or key things that you would say to someone doing their first ultra of that distance, given your experience with Liverpool to Leeds? Like any big takeaways you've got from it?
I would say, take it as it is at the moment. Um, don't take too much advice off people. Have a plan yourself. As people will tell you stuff, but it's what works for you. Um, One foot in front of the other. And don't run off too fast. I feel like that's a massive issue. A lot of people just run off too fast. Um, and it's probably better to go slow at the beginning so you can speed up. And not especially because you go overnight. I think if I did, well, I am doing Leeds to Liverpool again. I'd probably go faster before the night period because it's quite scary running through the night. Where I was, because it was like really unsteady.
And
So,
did you get a lot of practice, like of night running, before you went and did it?
not really, not in that terrain. I do run home from my friend's studio when I teach there. So, but that's mainly roads. I think this time I'd be a lot more confident because I just wanted to do 100 miles. It was like my goal last year. So I did take it a lot steady because I thought if I fall over and then hurt myself and then I have to pull out, I won't get my goal this year. As this year, I feel like I probably will go a lot faster because I've done the race. I know I can do it. So next year I can be more risky with my run.
And what are your, just on your races and like plans for this year? What are like your main goals or things that you're working on, or the things that might, like, for anyone who hasn't, who's watching, hasn't like tuned into your channel before, like what are the main things that you're going to be recording and will be coming up?
Well, I've got Lakelands, but I entered after Leeds to Liverpool. I didn't think I'd get through to it, and then I got emails saying I got through, but I was really shocked at. I don't know why. I didn't enter thinking I wanted to do it. I feel like this is a bit ignorant, like people who enter the London Marathon and then go, "Oh, I don't even want to run a marathon once I get through." But I got an email, so I entered it and got through. So obviously that's going to be the hilliest race I've ever done. So it's going to be like the lap twice and a bit more. So I've got to do a lot of hill training. I've got chest 100, but I've DNF'd twice. Last year it was because I sat down in a camping chair, and as soon as I sat down, my muscle cramped up and I couldn't walk after that. So that was a bad move. So I'd advise trying to not sit down if you don't have to in 100 miler, because you just don't know what's going to happen. And then I've got the Leeds and Liverpool again. I am doing like M12 and a couple of other races, but I'm going to use them as training runs. I've done them before. I've got one called the Loop in Manchester. What's like a 6-hour constant as far as you can go. What I'm going to use to try push myself there as well to see how far I can go in 6 hours. So yeah, I've got a lot more races than that. When I've written them all down, I was like, oh, I think this is a bit much because I've got Chester 100, and then a month later I've got Lakelands. But I think the Lakelands will be more of a walk because it's so hilly.
And had you, I suppose, had you booked the other races not thinking you would necessarily get into Lakeland, and then you had Lakeland as well?
No, what I kind of did was I kind of just book stuff and don't think about it. Like there is no like when I had a running coach, it didn't really. She was amazing. It didn't really work with me and my lifestyle and having a job where you teach it day and then teach it night. But she was like, "You book far too many races." But I just look at something and think, "Oh, I'll do that," and then I don't think about, "Oh, you've got this race before it or after it." So it's just like a constant journey of like thinking, "Oh my god, you've got to run this in a month." Like, don't get injured. To be honest.
Yeah, you're like the opposite of me in that way, and I sometimes think that like I'm a little bit too cautious and like, oh, well, but what about this race and this one and then this one? So I think I might need a bit of more of like, yeah, sign up for it, go for it.
At least you're
That kind of
sensible.
approach.
I'm just not sensible. But well, my student said I went today. I went. Oh, I do live a quite interesting life, don't you? Sometimes she was like, "You're insane." What's not extreme, like. But I think that's just part of my personality in itself.
So Andrew, I haven't got any other questions here, but I just wanted to see, is there anything else you wanted to say, like about mobility or running or anything like that before we round things up?
I'm trying to think off the top of my head. So, when it comes to mobility and running, don't ever judge. Well, I guess it's with everything. It's with running, go to gym. Never judge your journey off someone else's journey. Someone might progress faster or slower than you, but it's your journey. I feel like, especially social media now, we see the best of everyone and we see stuff, but literally when I look at students, especially now compared to like when I started teaching like 7 years ago, um we concentrate on other people more than, and I think it's to do with social media, of seeing someone at the best and how they're doing. But generally, like, everything you do is amazing because you are doing something what someone else isn't doing with the body. Like, to DNF, like, I didn't realise this when I DNF Chester twice, but the first time and I was going into the second, I was so upset that I DNF'd, and it was only when I was going in for the second time, I thought, oh my God, you've run 70 miles in so many hours, 73 miles in so many hours, and I didn't even get time to appreciate that because I was so hard on myself. And I feel like with anything, whether it's a DNF or you're not like, reflect on what you've done, because sometimes it's a journey, sometimes it's um what you've just done. But generally what you've just done is probably amazing. You're just probably not looking at the right aspects of it.
Yeah, really, I think really wise words. Yeah, because actually sometimes we can think like, oh, if it's a DNF or you didn't get the result you wanted, oh, it's a failure. But no, there's always going to be things that you can take from it, positives, and it's still a form of progress, even if it's not gone the way that you'd hoped or thought.
Yeah, sometimes I do feel like in life things happen for a reason, and both them times I DNF'd, but it's probably for a reason. I probably just wasn't ready, and I just probably needed to learn stuff um as well. And I feel like when I did, like, I feel like I got really good place at Leeds to Liverpool. I came like 14th place out of 70 people, but I didn't manage to do the 100 miler. But I feel like that's because I had to learn all them things to get that place and to be so concentrated. If everything was so easy, we wouldn't do it. It's like me with Paul. Like, students are like, it's hard. I tried it once. It was really hard, so I didn't come back. But when you was a child and you went to swimming lessons, on the first swimming lesson you couldn't swim, but you went back because that's what you was learning. So it's the same with challenges. Um, you go back because it is a challenge and it's something to think. If it was easy, we wouldn't do it, because like, people like to challenge themselves and people like to have a badge. And not saying like every race is a badge, but we kind of do like a badge and say like we've been able to do something, because that makes us self proud of ourselves. So it's not a
Definitely.
different
Yeah.
thing to be proud of yourself about like finishing something.
I just remember you saying when we had a chat on your channel last month, that you hadn't. Am I right? You hadn't been injured from running before.
Um, Not really. When I did Leeds to Liverpool, tied my lace too tight, and it was too tight for like 50 miles, and I wouldn't undo it in case my foot swelled up or in case the finger, and that caused my ligament in my foot to swell up a bit. But has actually only just gone away. It didn't hurt when I was running. I could run on it. It didn't cause it to inflame anymore. It was just because I tied it. But I've never had an injury, to be fair. I think I've had aches and pains, and that's all come from shoes. I've just tried now zero drop shoes. So do you know what that is? So it's where the
Yeah.
heel and the finger, and they really work for me. Um, but I do spend a lot of time barefoot, so I think that might be why I wouldn't tell anyone just to sack everything off, get some zero drop shoes. But that has actually made that heel up. Um, it was a bit scary for a bit, but I think it was just because it wasn't going. But I think because of my mobility training, my strength training, and obviously I don't sit in an office or anything. I'm constantly moving. I've never had an injury from running. Just once in a race, I had to pull out because of knee pain, and that was because I was wearing shoes with like hockers with like the massive thing, and I think that was the issue. But my foot wasn't ready for that because I spend so much time barefoot.
Do you generally find like the max cushioned shoes don't really work for you?
Yeah, I've always found that actually.
Yeah.
I'm more of a stability shoe kind of person. But I tried these zero drop shoes and I've ran my fastest 10k ever, and I feel like it builds the muscle and allows the core to engage for me. And I think I'm going to go with that. And to be honest, I'm actually going to do a video and like review my experience with them. So obviously that'll be on my channel later this month. But I think I'm going to try to do barefoot running. Because I do feel like it's very good to be grounded. There is studies where it's very good to run barefoot because it's very energizing, being connected to nature as well. So I think I might try that in the future. I'm not going to say that's going to be a thing and I'm going to be like this barefoot hippie runner. I'm just thinking it might be good to try it, just the experience.
100 miler barefoot exclusive on the channel.
What?
100 miler barefoot on the
Oh,
channel.
we was discussing this with I do have a sports massage person. I don't see him very often, but we was discussing about barefoot running, and he was saying, "What about roads? Because roads are not natural. So I reckon it's probably okay in like the trail, but on the roads it might be a bit hard on your knees." So, but it's
So you're
because
going to experiment and see. So that will be something you've got coming up on the channel. Do you want to just mention like your socials, like your channel, how people can access it, and Instagram and things like that, just for anyone so they can access that and have a look?
So my Instagram's well, everything is called Run Stretch Succeed. So my Instagram's called that. My YouTube's called that. Is there anything else? No, that's all my socials. My and obviously my Strava is Andrew Farrall. So I will actually comment then these down below actually after. But generally, Instagram is more about my training, how I feel about like new stuff I'm trying. It gives more in depth about that my daily training. My YouTube channel is more like races and little updates and me telling you about generally that month for training at the moment. I would love to do some challenges. So if anyone wants to go on my challenge channel and give me a challenge, I did 5k backwards before I went Download Festival in the UK, what was the worst decision of my life, because running 5k backwards, oh my god, it wasn't too bad when you're doing it. 2 days after, when you're lugging, you tend to cross a field for like 3 miles and you can't walk because you ran backwards was a big mistake.
Whole new set of muscles.
Yeah. Also, that gave me a lot of confidence with running because I saw quite a few people and they was like, "Why are you running backwards?" But they was laughing with me, not at me. So like people who are probably not watching this video, to be honest, people who are scared of running because they're a bit embarrassed. Generally, people don't care, and I think that's what that actually focused on. Was and the learning of that experience was that people are generally not going to laugh at you whether you're running backwards or forwards. And why what people think.
So if anyone's got any challenges for Andrew, then do comment them on his channel, and we could see like what crazy things we get him doing this year.
To be honest, the crazier the better, because I'm really open-minded. Me, I will do anything.
Yeah, so do pop those in the comments, and then we can give Andrew some challenges for this year. But yeah, thanks, Andrew. Thanks very much for coming on the channel. Great to talk to you, and I'm sure we'll catch up soon as well about like what you've got planned for this year and things coming up.
Yeah, okay. Thanks for having me anyway. It was amazing.
Yeah, no problem.
Talk about flexibility, to be honest, because I feel like a lot more people should concentrate on it. And I get that it's hard and it's discouraging when you've not got a lot of flexibility. But literally, when I started stretching, I can do the over splits now. So like I can go past the splits, and I couldn't touch my toes 7 years ago. So if I can do it, anyone else can do it.
Yeah, it's a good message to end on. So thanks very much, Andrew. Yeah, and we'll speak soon.
Speak soon. Right, bye for having me.
Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Bye now.